Hello, everyone. Welcome to Come Explore the new Query API for RENXT and FENXT. I'm joined today by four presenters. We're going to have Todd Yellen, who's Laureate Software Engineer at Blackbaud, followed by Carol Grant at Middlebury College, then Bob Rickards at St. Norbert College, and then Max Mermell at National Park Foundation. Todd, I'll pass it to you.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. So we are going to talk Query API for both RENXT and NXT. Scott gave the list of the presenters. I'm going to start and then we'll pass to some of our customers who will share their experiences working with the Query API. So my name is Todd Yellen. I'm a Laureate Software Engineer at Blackbaud, based in Arlington, Massachusetts, which is a suburb of Boston. In my current role, I'm working as an architect with RENXT, and for the past year and a half, have been the lead on this project to bring Query to WebView. So I've got a few screenshots there, but largely we are trying to basically replicate the functionality as you are used to it in database view. There's a list of queries. You can open individual queries in an editor with the standard tree of available fields and select fields and view results in the UI, perform exports, kind of all the functionality you are used to in WebView. The query UI is already generally available in FENXT. We are currently in an early adopter program for RE, but we are looking to get it out to all customers in the coming months. As some of you may be aware, that kind of the current version is somewhat limited in what you can do, and we're working to expand that, certainly for RE before we kind of go out to general availability. But so one of the nice things that comes with moving features from database view to web view is the introduction of Sky APIs surrounding those features. And so this whole presentation is really about the brand new Query API that gives developers ways to perform tasks related to query programmatically behind the scenes instead of only through the UI. So kind of standard set of core tasks for an API that mimic the capabilities you have in the UI. You can get a filtered list of queries, get the complete definition of an individual query, run a query and get its results, and I will talk more in more detail about that in a second. One endpoint in particular that has generated a lot of excitement is the ability to run an ad hoc query, meaning instead of providing a query ID to run an existing query that you've saved, you can provide the complete definition for a query that doesn't even exist in your database, and it will execute that and provide you with the results. So that's very powerful. There's an endpoint to refresh static queries that's in preview. And then a few things coming very shortly are the ability to add new queries and edit existing queries, along with deletion. And then there are various supporting tasks that are available that will help you really use the core endpoints, particularly around adding and editing queries. So you can see query types, actually get the complete tree of available fields through the API, work with categories, get valid values for fields that are based on lookups like code tables or other lookup types of fields. So more detail on what running queries looks like through the API. So since a query could take a very long time to execute, the running queries through the API starts a background job. So it's not you call an endpoint and you immediately get back the results. The sequence diagram is kind of showing the steps. So when you run a query, the response to that request is a job ID. And so that job runs in the background. And then you can call another endpoint called getJobStatus, passing it that ID. to check on the status of that job. And so you would either wait a sufficient amount of time that you expect it to be done, or you can pull that endpoint until the job completes. And once the job completes, the endpoint provides you with a URI that you can then use in the third step there at the bottom. You hit that URI to download a file containing the results. In Query API, we support letting you request results either as a CSV, a JSON file, or a JSON-L file. So we've added that flexibility specifically for developers where CSV might not be the best option and you want JSON. One other piece that's relevant to specifically to API developers is some features we've added to the UI. Anyone who's in the EAP cannot see these buttons yet. They are coming shortly with the ability to add and edit queries. But there's two buttons that'll be on the options tab. So in WebView, what used to be on the query options pop-up is now another tab on the editor. So there's two buttons there. One is copy query JSON. And what that does is it will take the definition of the query that's in the editor, it could even be unsaved, and copy to your clipboard the definition of that query in JSON format suitable for passing to the endpoints in Query API, such as ad hoc execute or post or patch. Really, the intent here was it's easier to build a query through the UI. So build it up in the UI, get the JSON out, and then you could call one of these endpoints with it. The copy query SQL button is not related to API per se, but is more for customers that get backups of their databases and want to run SQL statements against them. This is similar to the View SQL button in Database View. It will copy the SQL of the query out to your clipboard so that you can then run that query against those databases. Just to say, the screenshot here is RE's version of this tab. The FE version looks a little bit different. And then that copy query SQL button is a good segue into just a pitch for another session that I'm doing with David Springer, who's the product manager for Query, among a lot of other things in RE, and Sai Sheely of our operations group, discussing really how to get data out of RENXT and with various options now, including the Query API. So that is tomorrow at 3:45. Certainly come to that if you are interested in that aspect as well. If there's time at the end of this session, I can actually provide a bit of a demo of some of the API features behind the scenes, but for now I want to make sure we have enough time for all of our customers. So I'm going to go ahead and pass off to our first customer presenter, Carol Grant.
Looks like oh, there I am. Okay, I thought I was having a little bit of a delay. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. First thing that I wanted to demonstrate was really what it looks like in NXT, just very quickly. And let me start again. I'm Carol Grant. I am from Middlebury College in Middlebury, Vermont. We've been with Blackbaud now for 5 years, and it's actually a second jumpstart for us. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to share my screen and just show you some of the cool things that I was lucky to do in that I was one of the early adopters of the Query API. So let me go ahead and hopefully I can share. I'll just go ahead and share my entire screen here. So the first thing, I don't know if many of you, I'm still trying to learn how to present all of this. Oh, okay. All right. So maybe I shouldn't be sharing my whole screen. Let's go ahead and we'll go with a tab instead. Hold on. I'm just gonna, okay. we're going to go ahead and I'm going to share just my NXT screen here. Here's pretty much what this looks like in NXT, and I'll just cancel out of here. So this query part, I'm pretty sure you guys can, I'm hoping can see this. Can you see the analysis and then the query part when I drop down, or do I need to? I probably need to share my whole screen. Sorry. This, of course, you know, the demos are never like when you do live. So anyway, when you're in analysis, that's where the query part shows up. And then I'm going to go ahead and here I'm going to click on this query again. All this is a fun query, which does the constituent. I just have an import ID. Oh, I'm sorry. This isn't a fun one. But I just wanted to show you the options that we have. They are still very limited for everyone, even early adopters. So what I can do here is I can copy the link to the query, and I can also run it, and I can export the results. And so it ran it for me. Let me see. Here's some more results. I just clicked on that, and it does have names, so I'll quickly get out of that. But what it does is it actually does output your 4 records, your count and your records. So that's great. And when you click export, really what it does is it takes your results and it exports it into a CSV file. For right now, it exports it into your downloads. So then you can go and look at that output. So I just wanted to show you this in the UI, how it is. Here's your queries. What you can't do right now is you can't add any filters yet, but here are the fields. You know, it's the same pretty much drop down. And then I did want to show you the options are here instead of having to go to tools options. And what Todd was talking about, you know, some of those buttons that he showed would be down here. So that's really the first thing that I wanted to show for that regard. My next new share, what I'm going to do is really, oh, I got to share my power. Okay, Power Automate. Let's talk about Power Automate and how I am using it here. So what I'm going to do is I actually have used the template that Ashley Moose introduced. And what I'm going to do is I actually want to put in the chat. I have the link here of Ashley's. Once you guys have access, Ashley Moose created this template, and I just put in the in the chat really where you can find that template. So let me go back to, I don't want to send feedback. So I apologize to those of you that love the new look, the AI look. I don't. I still have not gotten used to the Power Automate, the Copilot. So I switched to the older one. I'm sure many of you can relate. I was going to try to demo in the other one, but decided not to. So really what you need is you need the query ID. Oh, sorry. Here, of course, I had an export run while I'm presenting. What you need is you need the query ID. How do you get the query ID? What you do is when you copied that link when I was back in NXT, that link, then I'm hoping, oh, it's not showing. Okay. What you do is if you're in query, you can look at data properties and you can get the query ID right from there. It's basically a system ID for queries. So each query has a system ID, and that's what you want to get. What I can do is I will do a new share here. I don't know. I know I keep clicking the wrong screen. I should just share my entire screen. So here, what I did was I just opened up one of the queries and it opens up, and then you copy the link right there. And then once you have it copied, then you can put this right into a notepad. And hopefully, I don't know if you guys can see this, but I copied it into a notepad. And then, oh, you can't. That's okay. All right, here's where this would go, the string ID. So I'm not going to spend any more time on that. The other good thing about Ashley's file is what this does, the template, is it saves it to a CSV file. So currently what I'm doing is right now I have a query that takes an action query and records the visits. So this is the query ID, and then you give the file that you want to export a name. So I went ahead and I'm going to call this one AG staff visits. And the good thing about this template is it goes ahead and it's going to post. It's going to gather the data and it's going to execute it by ID. So as Todd was saying, what it does is Ashley's got this set up so that it does a loop, it does do until, and so it loops until the variable is set to completed. The status is set to completed. So then you move down here and the output file is actually in this SAS URI. That's where the results are. So what it does is it runs this loop till the query status is complete. And then the URI is what saves the results. And then you get the results and you told it up here, sorry, I'm jumping around, but you told it up here that you wanted the query ID. I'm trying to look for where I wanted the job. So you do the get, you get the results, and then you do the job. And then you have a parse JSON in here. Okay. Then what it does in this SAS URI is the link. And here, then it's in a CSV format. And here I created a SharePoint folder where the output goes in a specific location. And I just tag date and time to it. So let me just talk about the possibilities here is second, instead of going through all these details. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to talk about how I'm using this. And how I'm using this is when Q broke for about a month, I had a lot of queries in there that were saving outputs because I do a lot of event queries for my Power BI reports. And now what we can do is we can take Power Automate and you can save the CSV file in the same folder as your Power BI data. So that's right now how I'm using it in this case. So I'm want to stop there, and I actually want to just show one more case. There is a full screen button. Yes, Carlene, maybe I should be doing that instead. It just looked a little weird. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go into something else that I thought was very beneficial for me. And that is now I was so excited that the JSON came out because I don't know if many of you, I'm sharing my second Power Automate here. What I'm trying to do here is, well, let me give you an example. So if somebody is a first-time donor and you're using first gift date, that is the hardest thing to get when you're using Power Automate because all you have is list constituents. And you're like, well, now how do I narrow this down? So now what you can do is you can take a query, and I'm going to just switch off this new designer here. Now you can take a query, you can have this Power Automate. What I have is here's the query. Okay. Now what I'm doing, I have a query in here by ID. And really what this is who's made an address change. And what I can do now is I can pull that in and I can run a query of who's had an address change. And what I do is my output is JSON. I'm hoping you guys can see this. So my output is JSON now. It's not CSV. The reason why I didn't have this in the other one is the default is CSV. So now I have a JSON. So now I'm like, okay, give me this ID, this query, and then give me the system ID out of that. So the same thing, it's doing do until, and then, query status is completed. And then when I get to down here, I have to parse the output, and I have a lot of fields in here. I just have to grab the system record ID. So you have to have the system ID in the output of the query and able to take this to do something else. So lastly, what I have here is I have the system record ID, and it's looping through the parse JSON. And now here and get a constituent, you can pull in the people from there. So I'm doing apply to get the system record ID from my query. And then you can just do other Power Automate steps. So here I'm like, okay, get this constituent. Is there a spouse? Then get the spouse. So really, this was my game changer here, because now you can actually limit the constituents and limit the gifts. If you want to do the parse JSON by do the output as JSON for your query. This looks like it's a lot of steps. I'm hoping the connector will help me as far as, I'm going to stop share here. Okay. So I'm hoping that the connector will make that a lot easier so that you're not, looping through each thing to get your query output. I'm sure there's a ton of questions. It's still sort of in an experimental stage for me right now. I guess that's it. So that's it for really my presentation. I'm excited about it. And that's it. So I'll look at the chat, see if I can answer anything else. Thank you.
I guess I'm next. Let me just pull up my presentation here. There we go. Carol used the term game changer, and I think that's exactly what this product does. Let me just, as you can tell, my name is Bob Rickards. I'm the Director of Stewardship and Information Services. We actually implemented Blackbaud in 2019. 2022, we implemented the Power products. I am a member of the Power Automate group and the Power BI group. And if you're not a member of either one of those groups, I would recommend that you join. There's some really good information being shared, as Carol just talked about. And I think it's a great plus for your program. So the problem that we had was our alumni office wanted a list of alumni board members. They wanted it on a regular basis. So we were trying to figure out how could we maximize Blackbaud and the Power tools. So what we did when we implemented was in 2019, we weren't really familiar with the product. So we just dumped all of our membership information into custom fields, which I'm sure a lot of you did too. The problem with that is our end users have access to NXT, and it could be buried several pages in behind the scenes. So we wanted to just bring this information a little bit more forward. As I said, the users only had NXT side, and we had to dig for the memberships. Probably not the best place to store. And lastly, we weren't using the membership tile to the full extent like we should have been. The problem is that the users couldn't get to membership through the list. Constituent wasn't tied in. We can only run a constituent list using a static report, which meant then I had to stop and update the static report, which took time out of my schedule to do something else. And there was an inability to schedule this on a timely fashion to be delivered whenever we wanted or whenever they wanted. So we weren't using some of the functionality of the power tools either. So got really excited. What we did is the first thing I did was I changed my static report to a dynamic report. And it then showed up. If you see the bottom query there, it showed up on the NXT query side. I saw it appear and I was just excited. So I did a little happy dance. Because having access to that now meant that I could pull it into the power tools. So I was able to create Ashley's template. I was able to grab that list, pull it into Power Automate, create a flow for it, design the flow to be delivered to our alumni base once a month, whenever they wanted. What was really interesting was the fields that I had pulled into the query came up in the report. I didn't have to do any extra coding with HTML. Whatever fields were in the query, designed or put in the query, they show up on the report as an Excel sheet or CSV, whichever one I wanted. So that made it really easy. And then I was able to schedule it to be delivered on a monthly basis. A couple of things that I thought I didn't have to redesign any of my queries that are already designed. Of course, I did have to make it dynamic from static to dynamic. But also any fields that I built in the query could automatically be viewed. So they could call me and say, add an email, add a phone, just quickly add it, and I'm done. We were able to use the existing template provided by Blackbaud and Ashley. And I had an email report designed and outputted in probably 20 minutes. And it's probably less than that. Low code works. The end users love the communication piece, and it reduced my workload. So for me, this was just a great addition, and we've moved on to other things, but I'm just presenting on this one. Max?
Hey, hello everyone. I'm Max Mermell. I'm the Specialist of Philanthropy Operations at the National Park Foundation, and I'm really excited to be here at BB Dev Days. I've seen a lot of excitement about the Query API in every session I've been in today so far, and it's so cool to hear how my peers are using this tool also. I'm going to be talking about one way that we've used the API. Rather than create a new project to use the API, it actually transformed one that had been ongoing. So I'm excited to share that story with you. This project is also membership focused, and I'm going to be talking about a lot of great work that has been done by Ashley Moose from Blackbaud and by NP Automate. So shout out to them. And after I talk about that project, if I have time, I'll share some ideas I've had about using the API in the future. So I want to start by saying that I use Query and Database View a lot, of course, like I'm sure all of you do. It's where I do my problem solving, data hygiene, update constituents, gifts, memberships. And in fact, all of our membership processes rely on queries. We use queries for each membership level to run global ads a couple times a week. For new memberships, we use queries for existing memberships to determine if they need to be renewed. We use queries to link gifts to the memberships. Query is already powerful. The really cool thing about this API is that it's unlocking that power for new connection points. And I'll be talking about Power Automate as well. So automation has been a big priority at NPF, and we have had a long-running goal to automate the membership process. Starting over a year ago now, we worked with Ashley Moose, who created a very sophisticated process to automate new and renewing memberships and linking gifts. And this process used queue, exports, NXT lists, Power Automate, and imports. And on the slide here, you should be able to see how these tools sort of flowed into one another. And Ashley deserves all the credit in the world for working with us when what we were asking for was sort of pushing the bounds of what the technology could do. So, like I said, I do all of the membership processes. The ones that I do manually, I do them all through query. And we were trying to recreate the logic in our queries outside of the database using these tools. So this resulted in some trial and error and lots of lessons learned. But when we got access to the API, it represented a huge breakthrough in this project. So we partnered with NP Automate, who created a brand new set of flows. And using the API, we could circumvent some of these tools in our previous attempt and plug our existing membership queries directly into a series of Power Automate flows. And so these new flows use the query API to feed data in and use the membership API to make the actual changes. So right now, because of the limitations of the membership API, all we can do is add new memberships, but I'm sure a lot of us understand how valuable that alone is. And so that's really how we've used it so far. We now have these awesome flows that are adding memberships on a daily basis with dynamic expiration dates. And, you know, we were close to making these flows a reality before the API, but the way they're set up now just kind of makes sense. We use queries to add memberships manually. Now we can use those same queries to add memberships automatically. And so this is a big win because our internal staff get to see their donor memberships added really quickly. And I'm happy because I don't have to spend the time running global ads for each individual membership level. So all in all, it's been a great tool so far. And if I have time, I can continue along and share a couple ideas, but Todd, you can stop me if there are questions to answer. So again, what I'm excited about is hopefully some new connection points. And also in the vein of automation, we have automated a lot of processes using Omatic Cloud. And Omatic Cloud is a web-based tool that we use to connect Razor's Edge and Luminate online. And Omatic Cloud relies on NXT lists, which are limited compared to query. And to create a dynamic list off of a query, you have to bring Q into the mix. And if we were able to hook up Omatic Cloud formulas directly to queries using the API, then you could eliminate a number of steps and tools. And really what I've learned is that an important aspect of automation is streamlining, because the more steps and workarounds, the more opportunity for error. Like when Carol mentioned Q going down for an extended period of time, I got flashbacks. But so anytime you can eliminate steps, that is a win. In terms of other ideas, the API could be a game changer in how we get data over to Power BI and visualization. And separate from that, one benefit I could see for NPF is that we have a lot of users who are WebView users only. And once the full capabilities of building queries in WebView are rolled out, it could serve as an opportunity for our staff to have a more direct line to our data, within certain parameters and with training. Of course, it could be a great opportunity for the staff. But yeah, that wraps up my portion. And I want to end by saying that there's just a lot you can do with the API already, and I'm excited to spend more time with it and for more features to keep rolling out. So I guess I'll hand it back over to Todd.
I think I'm going to hand it to Scott if there's anything to moderate here. If there were any questions that you felt were unanswered that any of our panelists could answer. Scott, are you able to join us again?
Todd, there's quite a few questions that we've moved over to Q&A. We're working through answering most of them. I don't know if there were any questions that you answered in the chat that are worth it for the entire group. I know people were interested in ETA for the release for it.
Yeah, I can talk through that, and then another theme, and I can speak to another theme that's come up a few times. One is, so the current state of query, as I mentioned, for RE, we're in EAP, and the functionality that's currently available is it's a read-only view of query definitions, and you can execute most queries. Even with that read-only view, we actually are at a pretty low, as Carol alluded to, a pretty low number of queries that are supported. It's really only the simplest fields that work right now. But we are actively developing, and in the next month or so, we expect to have the ability to add and edit queries, albeit still a limited set, out to FENXT, as well as the REEAP. And then in the next few months, we will be fleshing out all of the different types of fields that exist in database view, and thereby expanding support for which queries you can work with, until we are at or certainly close to parity with database view. We are hoping to be pretty much done with query by Q3 of this year. So that's kind of the timeline. I don't have an exact date as to when query will be available to all customers, or that eventual completion date. But that's to give you a rough idea of the timeline. The other theme that another thing I wanted to just answer, because I saw it coming up in a bunch of questions. WebView query is a new UI available through RENXT, but it is interacting with your RE database basically in the same way the database view does. So all the queries that you have in database view will show up in WebView. You create a new query in database view, you can immediately go over to WebView, hit refresh, and it will show up. Any query that you create in WebView should now immediately show up in database view. It's completely interchangeable as long as both are available. And then the same goes for Query API. Query API is simply a back-end way of performing the same operation that you might perform in the UI. So if you create a new query through Query API, that will show up in WebView, it'll show up in database view. It's basically all the same back-end with different ways of interacting with it. Were there other areas that you're seeing come up, Scott, or any questions for our customers?
There was one question, and Bob, maybe you can come off mute, or Carol or Max chime in. Do you have any issues with duplicates? How do you manage that?
Yeah, Dave, it was funny in the other main, I just was going to answer quickly, Bob. In the main session, David Ziedman and he's probably watching this, mentioned that sometimes there is a way, to avoid the duplicates and suppressing them. And I mean, I understand that, but I have not found a way. Of course, I do action, event, and I think proposal through query because that's easier to avoid duplicates. Bob, did you have anything to add?
No, I think you hit it right on the head. I think, just making sure that your data is clean, and I'm sure somewhere down the road they'll come up with something to help fix that.
Correct. And export meets so many things that query doesn't. getting it all flat in a row for some things that you need that way. So I just wanted to say that. And I also saw in here that somebody wanted to see the final results of what it looked like. So I thought I would just quickly share one of my CSVs. If I can, I'm trying to see who asked that. But anyway, I'll just quickly share if I can. Let's see.
I believe that was Susan Agro, Carol.
Okay. Oh, I think I deleted the some of the main. I'll make it bigger here. Some of the main. Yeah. So here, the only thing it adds is this column right here. It's called the Q record ID thing, but all the rest, this is just a CSV that I opened in Excel, and it's an action query with meetings, dates, and stuff like that. So it's not gobbledygook like you would think. It's very formatted in the way that you need it. I think that's all I have to add. Again, I think the list constituent, limiting that to just query results is going to be amazing. I'm going to be using it for a lot of maintenance reports. I don't know if anybody has anything else.
There's an interesting one from Marcy here. For the fields whose names have changed between database view and web view, i.e. fundraiser, solicitor, will the queries in web view use the web view names?
Hi, yeah, so we were actually just talking about this feature today. The plan is to update. So right now, everything is showing exactly as it is in database view. The plan is to make the fixes so that things that changed names between database view and web view will reflect the web view names in web view query going forward. But that's upcoming work.
I also saw in the chat somebody asked about, is there going to be a webinar for this, a much simpler way? Yeah, I think that right now they're working on a connector so that you won't have to send HTTP requests. Correct, Todd? Is there a connector coming for Power Automate for the query?
Yes, I believe there is.
So it will be less send requests for that.
Yeah, and I realized there was a kind of an important piece that I forgot to mention, which is when is this available? So Query API will be going GA to all. It's already GA for all FENXT customers. It will be going GA for RENXT customers shortly. I don't have the exact date, but it will be in June.
And Todd, GA acronym means?
Yes, generally available. So
Thank
available to everyone.
That includes Canada, Todd?
Yes, all zones. Yes, everywhere. Any RENXT customers anywhere in the world.
There was an interesting question as far as FENXT. Is there a query API for that also?
Yep, so it's the same query API. Actually, all of the endpoints require that you specify whether you are making a request for RE or FE. And if it's FE, you have to additionally say which module you are making a request for.
We are at time. Thank you all. Thank you, Todd. Thank you, Max. Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Carol. Thank you for your insightful questions. I'll post the survey. Enjoy the rest of Dev Days.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.